guys, it's Sophie. So it's a really lovely day today and I'm just using all the light I can. So I decided I was going to film my March wrap-up as well. And a few of you mentioned that you liked it when I split it into sort of adult fiction and other, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again this month because I really enjoyed that too. So the first book I have is If You're Not Yet Like Me by Edan Lepuki, and this is the kind of romance story that I really enjoy. The story is about a woman who starts falling for this man who is far from ideal. So he has a rubbish job, he can't dress himself, he says all the wrong things and sort of offends her, but she kind of falls for him anyway and ends up going back to his and they start this relationship. It's exactly the kind of thing that I'm into, a sort of realistic and quite dark look at romance rather than the packaged version that we see so often. Really enjoyed this one this month. And then the next one I have is The Power of the Dog by Thomas Savage, and this one's published by Vintage and it's one of their sort of reclaimed classics, I suppose, one that sort of went under the radar when it initially came out. And this is a really interesting novel. I may well do a review of this book on its own. The story is essentially about these two ranch hands who are brothers working in the middle of nowhere, sort of herding and really just looking after the land. There's not so much herding going on, but mainly sort of looking after the land. And it's the relationship between this older brother who's quite sadistic and cruel and this younger brother who's very gentle, who's sort of the personification of patience and kindness. And it's how their two personalities interact and how they sort of cope with the fact that there's a third person, this woman, who's been introduced as she has married the gentler brother. It's really powerful, it's a really stunning book, and I sort of felt that it was dealing with fear of homosexuality over anything else. But I think you have to dig a little bit maybe to get that, but that's what I felt about it, and the idea of sort of the macho man and what it means to be a man, and it was just really great, really surprised me. So if you haven't seen this one around or sort of heard of this one before, then go and pick it up, have a read. It's definitely worthy of sort of having a re-edition and trying to get the word out about it. So from a sort of reclaimed classic that I really enjoyed, I've got a classic that unfortunately I really didn't like, and it was Orlando by Virginia Woolf. I actually had to DNF this, and I very rarely DNF books, but I just couldn't anymore. I got a fair way the way through it. I sort of got easily 2/3 of the way through. It's a story about a man who is sort of a rich aristocratic man who is going through his life, but his life isn't sort of linear the same way ours would be. It goes over long periods of time, so sort of 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. And midway through he transforms into a woman and sort of has the experience of life from this aristocratic male view, from an aristocratic female view, and sort of takes off around the world and is sort of viewing life from loads of different perspectives. Sounds like something I'd love, sounds like something I could really get into, and I think the premise was really interesting, but I just didn't enjoy the way that it was put together, the way that the sort of story was constructed. I found it dragged terribly and it was an effort to read, and I realised sort of as I was about 2/3 of the way through, I just don't think I fancy reading to the end. I'm just going to see what happens. So I did, and I'm happy with that. It's going to stay on my bookshelf. It's also going to stay on my read shelf, which normally I don't let myself do. I normally just keep them until they're finished, but I think I'm kind of finished with it. But I'd like to have it around just in case I change my mind one day. And then the next one I have was a bit of a disappointment. It's The Bear by Clare Cameron, and I was really excited for this one. It's a story about a young girl and boy who sort of survive a bear attack in a camp in Canada, and their parents don't. And it's about them sort of finding their way through the wilderness, and it sounded like everything I kind of liked. Child narration, dark storyline, misunderstanding about maybe what's happening. I just didn't like the young girl's voice. I didn't feel as though she sort of fitted that child's persona. So sometimes when you read child's perspectives, they just don't quite feel as though the person writing it is a child, and I think that bled through a bit. Some of the language is a bit too advanced considering the girl's about 5 years old, and odd sort of sentence structure that she understands and abstract concepts in quite sort of good detail but wouldn't know the name of other things, and I couldn't get over that. So I don't recommend this one particularly, though. It's kind of a light read. I think probably people who don't read all that much might enjoy it more than me, but I didn't like it, I'm afraid. And then next I read The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. So lots of people know about this book already, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but they are reworked fairy tales and original fairy tales by Angela Carter. It's quite a red text in terms of sort of schoolwork, A-levels. I know some A-level syllabuses do it, I think. And she's sort of exploring all of these classic tales and rewriting them with a more adult, twisted version of them. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, unfortunately. It may have been because I didn't read all of the fairy stories in there when I was a child, so I wasn't connecting them enough with the original text. And on to another short story collection. I read No One Belongs Here More Than You by Miranda July. Oh my goodness, I love Miranda July. I read the first Bad Man by her and I just raved about that one, and exactly the same about this one. I love these stories. They're weird as hell. They're just the kind of short stories that I absolutely adore. There is a story about a swimming class where this woman decides she's going to teach all of these old people to swim, but she doesn't have a pool and she's never been a swimming teacher, so it's enough that she just lets them lie on the floor and she'll put their head in a bucket of water to make them feel like they're underwater, and she'll make them kick and swim across a carpet. It's all those sorts of things. It's absolutely wonderful. Some of them are really sad, some of them are really funny. Yeah, I just highly recommend them. I can't think of a story in there that I didn't enjoy, which is quite rare for a short story collection. So the next ones I have are two Saramagos. So I have Blindness, which is the first book in the sort of series, and Seeing, which is the second one. So I hauled this one first and people sort of said, do you know it's part of a two-parter? I didn't, but I picked up both and read both in the same month. I thought that would be useful. Really, really loved these books. And the fact I love them so much, I'm going to have to do a review on their own because I'm already rambling too much in this video and I really need to talk to you about these books. Specifically Blindness, but the writing and seeing. So hold off on that one and I will talk to you soon and have a bit of a letting out of all the emotions that these books gave me. And the next one I read was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So this is the second Margaret Atwood that I've read. I read her short story collection The Tent in 2015, but had never picked up any of her other books, and know that lots of people absolutely love her and thought this one would be a good place to start because it's such a popular one. This is a story, if you don't know, about a woman who is living in a society in which women are determined to be either sort of very upper class and sort of do nothing, sort of servile class who look after the rich women and their husbands, or handmaids who are the breeding stock essentially. And it follows a woman who is a handmaid, so she has no sort of value other than her reproductive value. So really it's a deconstruction of the roles of women in society and speaking about how women in those roles interact with one another and how they interact with men who are sort of allowed to be three-dimensional and sort of flawed, whereas the women have to fit into their certain roles or else they are ostracised or hanged in this book. It's kind of science fiction as well as being a sort of gendered book, so it was really, really cool to sort of see that mix of genre there, and I think it is quite sort of a powerful novel, especially the ending. I don't want to do any spoilers, but the ending made it so much more exciting for me and really did sort of bring it into a harsher light almost. So if you're yet to read A Handmaid's Tale, I know a couple of people have said to me that they haven't read it yet, it's not too late, and it is good. Some cool messages in there and some things to make you think. And then the very last one for my adult fiction for the month of March is The Woman at Point Zero by Nawal El-Saadawi. This book, oh my goodness guys, I read this in one sitting this morning. I sat down in my bed with my bagel and my coffee and I just dived in. It is so good, and let me tell you what it's about to start with. So this book begins with a woman who goes around visiting sort of mentally ill people who have been in prison for crimes, and she meets this woman in here who is sort of declining to speak with anyone and has this odd sort of mythical, regal air to her in the way that she closes herself off so much from everyone and their opinion of her. And this woman is really enthralled and really intrigued by this woman's story and eventually becomes able to speak with her, and the woman tells her story. It begins with her as a very young girl and she's sort of trying to fit in and trying to understand why men and women aren't treated equally in her society, and then growing up and learning about the inequalities in the most awful ways, but the way that it's told is absolutely stunning. The way it's told makes it feel as though you're reading like a very old fairy story or a very old tale, like it's a tale that's been told to you by someone sort of years and years ago. And it's lovely for that reason. It's something that you go into, and there are little recurring pieces every now and again that just bring it back and give it that sort of old folktale feel to it. The subject matter is hard to read, but the book itself is very easy to read. As I say, I read it in one sitting, and it's a very different take on feminism and on the way that women interact with men than anything I'd read before, because it's told in Egypt. It's a different sort of background to the feminism I've been exposed to. So thank you ever so much to people who recommended this one to me. Absolutely right to. I really loved it. So apologies for the rambling, but these are all of the adult fiction books that I read in the month of March. I had a really good adult fiction month. Yeah, I've had a really good adult fiction month. Loads of these books I really enjoyed. So hopefully I've encouraged you to buy a few of them, because yeah, I'm quite passionate about a few of these books, and it's unusual I have so many good books in one month. So fingers crossed that April is just gonna blow it out of the water. I'm gonna have an amazing April. Hope you're having a lovely day and that you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon in my non-adult fiction wrap up. Bye bye.